But once again, there's another picks and bans analysis. We're just going to go through them. This one, by the looks of it, I can't remember the team names, but I know on the left-hand side, that is 5 Angry Men. On the left, I can't remember the name of the team. Apologies, team, for not knowing it. I should know the team name, because it's got Paradox and Jervian, and I can't remember what they're called. I can't remember what they called themselves. I'm sorry. I just know the players. Anyway, into picks and bans. Serket, Bandaway, Xbalanque, Bandaway. Very similar to the last one I currently did. Serket, very strong in the jungle. Has a fantastic early game, has good damage potential, has good setup potential, early pressure ganks with the healing meter coming online to an extent, so Ket's going to be very strong. Not surprised to see it constantly still being banned. Xbalanque banned away. Everyone's starting to realise that he is fantastic for his wave clear, causes a lot of issues in the later stages of the game as well. Don't forget his ultimate one of the best ultimates that are underrated, to be honest, because limiting vision, you buy wards to try and get vision, right? And Xbalanque denies you all vision for a few seconds, also gives him mobility and attack speed as well, and as well he's got the Rising Jaguar, it makes him very difficult to gank. Athena banned away as well. Athena, one of the top picks in the support role right now. A lot of people saying she is like the pick and ban, so not surprising to see her banned away there. She's good for the wave clear in the early stages, not as good as some of the Guardians, but all the other warriors that are playing the support role right now. But what she does have is global mobility, so she doesn't have to be in lane to influence the lane, as well as she has the taunt, and the taunt is very, very strong, can hit multiple targets, cause a lot of issues, and a great setup potential. Thor banned out as well. We said once again, Thor is very strong in the jungle still these days. It's not a surprise to see Thor being banned away or picked very, very early on. He's not a permaban. I think Athena and Xbalanque are the ones that are going to be seeing more of this permabans more than anything else. Everything else is kind of up to the teams of what they don't want to deal with based off the compositions they're going for. I think that's the sort of meta we're currently in at the moment. No one's 100% sure what the best picks and bans are, so there's going to be a lot of messing around at the moment. But Thor banned away just because he's got a fantastic early game, late game, mid game. He transitions during the later stages to more of a supportive jungle in terms of setup potential and less on the damage side. But if he gets fed early, he can single-handedly cause issues for a team. Ice is going to be the first pick for 5 Angry Men here. Now, Isis being picked very early when Agni's available and Poseidon's available is an interesting pick. I mean, against a Poseidon, she does have very good wave clear and can push him back if they go for a Poseidon. Against an Agni, she has a good matchup earlier on. It's generally in Isis's favour because she can clear the wave early on. So they're looking for an early game aggression coming out from Isis and to put the pressure onto the mid laner early and maybe look for rotations early on potentially. They've also picked up Bastet and Artemis there. We'll come to them later, but we'll look at Nemesis and Guan first of all that were picked up. Nemesis, a jungler that is fantastic right now. She's good. The only thing that Nemesis really struggles with is her early game. She's not fantastic until she gets a couple of items online, gets a couple of levels under her belt, and can start really causing a lot of issues for teams. She's great against high tanky targets, and picking Nemesis early in a composition says, if you pick anyone tanky, we're going to destroy them. She's also very good at limiting mobility as well, so some gods like Ra might not seem as, as big of an impact as you think, but she can cause issues for Ra with the slow. Nox as well is another example. Anyone that's easy to get in range of and to slow and keep them pinned, it can cause a lot of problems for even on the squishier side of things. Guan Yu picked up as well, more than likely in the support role this time. Guan Yu has some fantastic matchups in terms of the support lane right now. He's okay against, has a few issues against Athena and a few issues against Ymir. I think his issues against Athena aren't as bad as some people make out, just because Athena's mana costs are quite high. Generally what we're talking about here is the Tallow Assault. Tallow Assault's his wave clear ability, and normally if you Tallow Assault, what can happen? Well, when you Tallow Assault, you can get taunted, and that'll stop the Tallow Assault, or you can get frosted by Ymir. Ymir can use his freeze as well. But using the taunt will cost a lot of mana during the early stages, so it's not as bad of a setup as you think for Guan Yu to go into that matchup and lose the taunt. We're going to mess up with the picks and bans now, unfortunately, as I took so much time with that. But we'll go through what was picked. It was Artemis and Bastet were the next two picked up in this matchup. Artemis and Bastet. Artemis is starting to come back now. People starting to realise that once again she's back in the meta. Why is she back in the meta? Well, her Suppress the Insolent was the skill that was nerfed on her and made her unplayable because she didn't have much wave clear anymore. But now that all the hunters are now focused on auto attack base to clear their wave in terms of using their spells to clear the wave for the most part, it means that Artemis is now back on the table. Take into account her passive gives her free crit potential, as well as her 2 is a fantastic steroid for mobility and damage output with the attack speed. So Artemis is a viable hunter once again. We're starting to see a lot of play out of her once more, and she has good matchups like she always did, especially against the gods that she used to have issues with. They've been hit on the backside, and her one that she doesn't have the greatest matchup against, and her's so far out of the meta right now because of his nerfs that Artemis has now started to creep back into the meta once again. So we'll see Artemis coming back. Across the way, I believe we saw Tyr was picked up next. People are starting to realise how strong Tyr actually is once again. He's got great sustain in the lane. He's very hard to kill, can build tanky at the same time as still deal decent damage. Has a lot of setup potential for his team and causes so many issues on the backline. He's very hard to kill and very hard to pin down. Has a lot of escapes, has great initiation too. So he's a good initiating god that can also do a lot for his team. Picks up the counterban phase, we saw Poseidon banned away, and we also saw Ymir banned away. Now, if you look at what happened so far in this Poseidon, we saw the Isis pick up earlier on, so you're looking for a mid laner to really ban away from there. You're not really worried about Agni in the stages. Like I said, Isis has good matchup against him. Poseidon can push back pretty strong against an Isis and cause Isis a few issues, not too many though, so it's not a surprise to see Poseidon banned out. Isis, Poseidon, and Agni, Scylla are like the four that we see more than anything in mid, and a little bit of Ra too, to be honest. Ra's going to start creeping back in there, so it's not going to be a surprise to see Poseidon banned there. Ymir banned out away, well, this was because they'd already picked up Guan in that lane matchup, so they didn't want to have to deal with Ymir. Ymir, like I said, is the one pick that Guan's going to have the biggest issues with trying to kill, trying to deal damage in that lane. If he uses Tele Assault, he's going to get frosted immediately, and then he can get turned on, and Guan's going to have a few issues with it. On top of that, if he tries to use his charge, his 2 to get away, Ymir can wall him off. On top of that, Ymir's got fantastic wave clear with his 2 as well, and that also means that Guan doesn't have as much pressure on that lane as he wants to. He's more happy to leave Athena was already banned, so taking out Ymir means that they've got to look elsewhere for their support role against Guan. And what they did was they picked Geb. Now, we already said Geb doesn't have a great lane matchup against Guan Yu. I think Geb is still a good pick. The problem with Geb now is he does get hurt a lot in the early stages of the game. He's not the best in the early stages. He never was, to be honest, but now his lane matchups are a little bit more difficult. He's very, very passive in this lane. And people need to start realizing you can abuse a Geb in lane a little bit more. If you've listened to the other supports, what you're finding is that most of them are taking Vanguard at the start of the game to give themselves sustain. Unless you're playing a warrior, then you may go Bluestone Pendant for infinite mana, which is fine. But against a Geb, what you can look to do is take a Watcher's Gift, because there shouldn't be much kill potential in a lane with a Geb in it. It's got to be a farm lane, and you're not going to take too much poke from a Geb in that lane, so you can afford to go for Watcher's Gift, which will give you a golden flux, which means you can build your boots quicker, you can build your sovereignty quicker, and get tankier quicker on in this game. And the final pick on this team was Ra, and we also saw Hel picked up as well. Hel, fantastic god. People are starting to realize she is viable. She has a lot of good matchups. The matchup that we're going to see here as well, just to be clear, Bastet versus Hel, it's definitely in Hel's favour. You don't want to try and gank a Hel with a Bastet. It's not going to work out that well. Why? Because Hel has great AoE damage that can clear the cats off her. If she gets slowed, she can cleanse them as well. And then also, when she's in a light stance, she can use her one. I don't remember its name because I'm really bad at this game. She can use her one to actually heal off the cats as well. So she's actually getting free 2 heals off when those cats come onto her, and she can clear them out pretty quickly. So it's very hard for a Bastet to be effective against a Hel. People seem to think that Hel has issues against a Bastet. Not really true. And the last pick that we saw there was a Rama. Rama's there and thereabouts still. He's still the same as what he used to be. He took a few little hits to his overall wave clear, but he's always been auto-attack focused anyway. It doesn't necessarily mean he's really, really bad now. He still provides the same thing to the team. Still has those snipes and the ability to get out of combat for up to 6 seconds by taking to the sky with his ultimate, which will buy him enough time for his team to rotate in and save him. Plus, he's got the role as well for repositioning. Rama, I'd say, is still a pretty safe laner, and I still think he's up there. I just don't think he's up there as much as the others when you've got the likes that can clear the wave a little bit more effectively and for less mana costs as well. Take into account Rama's one does cost mana, and to do that, to wave clear effectively and fast, he has to use a lot of mana. But with Bluestone Pendant, he should be alright as well, so I don't think Rama's dead. I think we'll see more and more Rama coming back. The last pick that we didn't really speak about yet was Ra. He's going to go in the solo lane at the moment for this game. And Ra still is Ra. He's still got great damage potential on him, even without his penetration boots coming online. He still has good damage, good survivability for his team. On top of that, the Lotus Crown. The Crown of the Lotus. Everybody's starting to realize how strong this item is, so having a healer on the team with that Lotus Crown provides the whole team with extra protections, as well as the heals that they already give as well. So that item very, very strong and picked up on most healers. You'll probably see Hell pick it up at some point as well, because when you've got that, it makes you a lot more tankier. There's been plenty of games that we saw over the weekend where as soon as a Lotus Crown was completed, things started to change in the other team's favour. Lotus Crown wasn't the be-all and end-all of it, but it did have an impact. It's just like when you complete your Sovereignty earlier on as a support and then you look to fight, your team's going to be a lot more tankier, a lot more survivable. In this game matchup, let's just look at the lanes individually like we always do. Geb and Artemis are going to be up against Guan Yu and Rama. Well, in terms of wave clear, Artemis can clear the wave a little bit more effectively than Rama in the early stages. The problem being, however, is that Artemis's mana costs are quite high if she wants to try and full clear. So auto attack based, it's still going to go just, if we just go off auto attacks, Artemis should win just because of passive crit that will push it. But then we factor in the supports. Geb's going to have Shockwave, does some okay damage to the creep wave, but then you've got Guan Yu with that Tallow Assault. He's going to put a lot of pressure on. So what you'll probably see is Guan Yu and Rama should be the ones to control this lane for the most part. Geb's going to play very passive during the early stages. He's going to technically have to in this matchup, just because Guan Yu and Rama could just try and focus him down. I don't think Rama's the best against a Geb, but they could have had other picks that would be better against a Geb. But in that matchup, he should technically just about go in Rama and Guan's favour. In the solo lane, we'll see Ra up against Hell. That is a battle of wills more than anything. Hell definitely has the early game aggression over the Ra. She can push the wave under Ra's tower earlier on. Ra's heal does not affect as strong as Hell's does, because Hell's is very bursty during the early stages, while Ra's is all tick. So Hell can put the... Actually, it's not Hell in the mid lane. I'm telling lies. It's Tyr versus Ra. Tyr versus Ra is a farm lane. It's very difficult for either of them to potentially get a kill on the other one. Tyr with fantastic sustain, Ra also with fantastic sustain as well. It's going to be difficult to get kills on each other. Potentially there's a kill for Tyr in that lane. It's very difficult for Ra to really get a pick onto Tyr unless he misplays, but Tyr could potentially make a big play and make something happen there. Isis versus Hell in the mid lane. I actually like that matchup. I didn't really think about it at first, but we talk about the mid lane matchups, and Isis is very strong in the early game at pushing. Well, Hell is really strong in the early game too, and one thing that she's got in the early game is that amazing AoE heal that also heals minions that stops some of Isis's push power in these early stages. She's got sustain as well as she's got great damage output. So this matchup is actually pretty even between the two of them. I'd actually probably say it's a skill matchup, but slightly weighted in Hell's favour. Reason being is the fact that the sustain coming out from the heals is going to make a bigger impact. In the jungle, Nemesis versus Bastet. This generally should go in Bastet's favour, I want to say. Nemesis is really strong. This is just in the early game, by the way. I'm not going to talk late game, because late game it should be Nemesis that wins this. Bastet can get a lot of poke onto Nemesis. She's not necessarily going to be able to kill a Nemesis outright because of the shield and the dashing away and the cats chasing after her. But the cats do chase for quite a considerable amount of time. So if played correctly, either of those could really win. I'd give it a slight edge. It's like 5.5, I'd say, in favour of Bastet in the early game matchup. But as the game goes on, you'll see Nemesis definitely come back into it and make a big impact. Think about the fact that Nemesis also has great targets for when the game goes on, in terms of Geb, to be able to just ult him, steal those protections, and start going on a rampage, also shutting down the Geb and one of the biggest initiations on the team. And that was the jungle, done mid, done solo, and that's all of them for this one. We'll be back again shortly with another picks and bans analysis, and just going through them and discussing what's good, what's bad, why did they pick it, to an extent, what does it bring to the team. Thinking about that though, we've not actually gone through what the composition's going to do. This is one thing that people don't really think about. You want to think about the composition. Who's the setup gods in the compositions? What's the game plan with the composition? Well, this team is all about skirmish fighting. Why is it all about skirmish fighting? Because these guys all, look how much sustain they've got on this comp. We've got Tyr with heals, we've got Hell with heals, we've got Guan with heals, we've got Nemesis technically with a heal thanks to her shield. So this team is all about skirmishing and picking people off and getting people brutally murdered to an extent. And when they actually do manage to pick somebody off, or they get into a skirmish, even if the skirmish goes badly, they can disengage the skirmish and then all sustain back up again. Guan can heal them, Hell can heal them, Tyr can heal himself as well, and they can sustain back up and look to continue the fight again if they want to, or look for another skirmish. So it's very difficult to bring down this team. Across the way, though, look at the composition they've got together. Good sustain with Ra and Isis. They're looking to burst somebody down, but they're great for the team fight situation of big groupings. If this team group up, this is a skirmish team, remember, if they all group up and Geb gets a good ultimate in there with a Cataclysm, Isis can set up some fantastic damage as well. Bastet with the cats can chase fleeing targets, and Artemis's boar, well, we all know what the boar is like on them. So they've got great sustain throughout the game as well with Ra for push power for sieging. And so that's going to really help them out. I'd say the one thing about Ra and Hell that you need to know as well is that Ra's probably the best for sieging and positioning yourself to siege a tower. Hell is probably the better of the two in terms of defending a tower, because of the fact that when you use Ra in a defensive situation against a siege, you have to pop that heal down, and everybody tries to stand in the heal. If you do that, you're grouping up and you make yourselves a prime target for someone like Tyr to blink in, Fearless, combo your whole team. Or if they had a Geb, Geb could blink in Cataclysm the whole team because they're all trying to stand in the heal. What Hell can do is move around and throw out a heal and then reposition a second later, and it's very, very difficult to catch her out of position. So